Hello there, and welcome to Star Wars Music Minute, where we celebrate the music and sound of Star Wars 5 cinematic minutes at a time. I'm Xanthe Tan, and today's episode is based on minutes 66 through 70 of Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. In this set of minutes, DJ asks BB-8, "Did you do this?" Finn and Rose meet the stable boy and set some Fathiers free, and they ride through the casino in an attempt to escape the cops. Joining me today is Matt Burkey, whom I wanted to have on because he tends to think about things very differently than me. So I look forward to having an alternate perspective. Hello, Burkey.
Hi, I'm Matt Burkey, and I'm not qualified to be here.
Yeah. You are qualified to be here, and welcome.
Thank you.
So,
Star Wars Minute.
Music Minute.
Star Wars Music Minute.
I gave Burkey an assignment leading into this, and so shall we just start with that? Should we start with the assignment?
Let's get the homework out of the way.
All right. So I prepared answers to these questions too, and the assignment was just to compare and contrast our feelings. See, I look forward to seeing this. All right. Number one is, what are some objective things you noticed about the music in these 5 minutes? If any.
Well, the chase scene music is very chase scene-y. It works well, I think. And
what do you mean by chase scene-y, though?
The chase scene music shouldn't be like a happy-go-lucky song.
So you don't think it's happy? Okay.
No, there's some stressfulness and some tension, but it's not overt. The overt tense music is when the little orphan boy is about to hit the alarm, and the music goes up really high, and sounds like some short, sharp notes.
Okay. I wrote that down too, actually, as one of my things. I wrote that there's a crescendo. Like when the boy, what was that? Crescendo? Like when something gets louder. And like when he's moving his hand toward the button is when it's like, doo, and it swells and then cuts off. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I wrote that down too. Okay, cool. Anything else? I'll notice a couple. I'll say, we can just trade off.
Yeah.
Okay.
You go.
When BB-8 blows out the match, there's a quick little like string trill or tremolo. It's like like really quickly as he's blowing it out.
I didn't notice that part because I was trying to figure out how the droid makes a blowing noise.
I actually was wondering about that too. And I figured it must be like a mechanical thing.
His exhaust port, it just happens to be right there.
Because I feel like there are like real world mechanical things that work that way too.
Like cooling fans.
Oh yeah. I didn't even think of that. That's an obvious example. But yes. I noticed that when Rose opens her ring, so she opens her resistance ring to show the boy to Mary Blag, to show that like they're safe, and that they're with the resistance. And as she's like revealing what's in her ring, there's like a nice little harp glissando. And glissando is like when you do this, but it's on harp. And so it's kind of like it's often used when something like magical, like when there's like a magical reveal.
Something whimsical.
Yes, but with a magical quality, with like not whimsical in a
not
just wacky
whimsical
way, but but like I think Harry Potter.
Would you play it? So if I was an Imperial spy with a rebel ring to fool you, would you play those notes backwards or in a lower key?
I don't know.
That sounds kind of slapstick comedy.
It does. But also I'm playing it on piano, and on harp it would be much more like harpy. You know what I mean? No?
Yeah, I know what a harp is.
But yeah, I think just the like archetypal, is that what I'm trying to say? Stereotypical harp sound when someone's like going into heaven, like the angels harp. That's what we get a little glimpse of when she's opening her ring.
I noticed the music switched quite a bit when they went to about to press the alarm button to stopping from pressing the alarm button and then the ring reveal.
Yeah, what also happens there is the resistance march. You have a
Should I
blank look on your
recognize
face.
that? I was like, oh, everyone knows the resistance march. Like, oh yeah, those notes.
So that is what happens there. And we'll go into more, like I have a lot more details to go into, but just while getting through this assignment. Okay. So the next question was, and I'm really interested to hear this. What other visuals or action could you imagine this music working well for? Like any of the music in any of these 5 minutes, like if you had to remove the picture entirely and put your own scene in there, like what would we see to the same music?
With the chase scene through the casino and the city, it felt the first thing I thought of was the trench run in episode 4. And I thought you could just replace the trench run music with this and it would work just as well. Or I played a lot of Star Wars video games before, and I feel like that would work in any of the space battles.
Something where there's like pursuit and
chasing, yeah, and an objective, a clear objective to accomplish.
Oh, that's an interesting point. The objective part. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Of like, you're not just running fast because you're like
I'm not out
jogging
for a
around.
Jog.
Yeah. You're running because of a specific reason. And it's like a sprint where that's not a sustainable pace where you're going to have to end somewhere.
Or a trench run or a dog fight. You're not just out for flying around for fun in your X-Wing. You're trying to.
There's a little bit anxiety involved. There's adrenaline involved.
Adrenaline, I think, is an apt description.
Yeah.
And then when Finn asks for cover and they go through the tunnel that is just exactly Fathier height.
Oh, that's so scary.
Yeah, as a tall person, I'm afraid of short tunnels. If I was on the Fathier, I wouldn't be on the other side of the tunnel. It'd be more comedy notes.
Oh.
Head injuries. That music really reminded me of Indiana Jones. I feel like it could have been fit into the Indiana Jones 4 films.
Ah. Similarly, like with the pursuit of something, like the goal.
Yeah. I didn't really think of pursuit or goal. I just thought this reminds me of Indiana Jones music, and I wasn't sure if it's like things you mentioned on past episodes, like motifs, or John Williams referencing other work.
There are a lot of reasons, I suppose it could have been. One is like maybe it's the fact that is it the part like when Rose's theme cuts through, maybe? Where it's like
that yeah.
Oh, okay. So what Burkey's talking about is when they're chasing riding the Fathiers. This is when on the soundtrack. This is when the track entitled "The Fathiers" is playing, and it's like it's like this really fast and interspersed within that they like put Rose's theme. It's like and then it kind of goes back and forth. And I
hear it when you sing it like that. I don't hear it on the piano.
Oh, that makes sense. Maybe it's because the piano is like, I don't know. The piano has its own specific like sound. I know what you mean. When I hear things on piano, sometimes like what it overwhelmingly is like, I'm hearing piano rather than like hearing what the piano is playing. You know what I mean? Because the piano is like a reduced version of the orchestra. I think if you sing it, it's less devoid. Like it has fewer associations, like Chopin and whatever. And I can with my inflection, sort of. Yeah, don't know if that made sense. Nope, probably didn't.
It made sense.
Okay.
No, it made sense because I can hear it more when you sing it than the piano.
Yeah, because there's more variety maybe in the like tone of voice.
Mm-hmm. It's smoother transitions in the voice than the sharp differences between piano notes.
True, because the piano is a percussive instrument, so you can't do legato, which means like smooth notes, like connected notes on piano as well, since each note technically has to be like hit. You can't like slide and do stuff like that.
Hmm.
Interesting. That's good food for thought for me for the future. Hey, maybe I can just do singing examples. So yeah, when it switches to Rose's theme, the instrumentation switches, and like a lot of main themes, like in Star Wars and Indiana Jones, use the horn as like the hero melody, and I feel like that may have been what you were picking up on, is an association with Rose's theme.
Horns for heroes.
Horns for heroes, yes. Not violins. Violins are for scary stuff. Just kidding. It's also for really pretty stuff, and it's also for the best stuff. So, what I was going to say was the Fathiers music, to me, it's really hard to separate it from horse racing music, like horse galloping music. And I'll get more into that actually, maybe I'll just get it. Should I? It's like a whole
Let's
rant.
get it.
It's a whole thing.
Let's get into it now.
It's a whole thing. Okay. The Fathiers track, I would describe it as rambunctious, frantic, rollicking, perhaps. It's definitely very fast, and something that really characterizes it for me is its consistency with the tempo. Like it keeps pace. It's not one of those pieces that ebbs and flows with the tempo. It really like keeps up with the Fathiers running, which makes sense. It seems really not tied, but it seems really reminiscent of a tradition of classical pieces about horse racing or that involve horse racing. And I don't think it's intentional. I think it's more so that like the rhythm of galloping can be rhythmically portrayed in music. So the gallop is like, it's consistent, but it's a little bit of a lilt, and it's a little bit of a lopsided rhythm. So one might say it's a dotted rhythm or whatever. But what I'm getting at is it's like do 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 do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this makes sense. Sounds like coconuts.
Coconuts.
Well, when they're recording the film score, aren't they playing the film in the room or nearby sometimes?
Oh, yeah. Not with, yes. Normally, when they're recording the film score, generally in film, normally you're looking at the screen while you're recording. But with Star Wars, they were not allowed to. So, yeah.
Oh, secret.
Yeah. Only John Williams had a tiny little screen to look at, but the musicians couldn't see anything.
So is he conducting at the pace of a horse gallop?
I would say. Do you think it seemed like a horse gallop tempo? It felt like one to me.
I think it worked. I think it would stand out more if the music was slower or faster than the Fathier speed.
What do you mean by stand out?
Like a lot of times with sound design or movie sound design and movie scores, I don't notice them unless there's something off. So like if the tempo of what's happening on screen and the tempo of what's happening in the music is mismatched,
Then you would
like
notice.
then I would lose immersion in the film.
Yes. So here they did the opposite, where they seemed to like match it.
They did the right thing of I'm not noticing the Father music stand out. I'm immersed in the whole world.
Yeah, like it feels like it matches.
Like
I'm
if
trying
they
to think.
played the Imperial March during the Father running, that's at the wrong tempo of horse galloping.
Yeah, it would be like weird to see their feet. It would be weird to see the pace on screen mismatch with the pace that we're hearing. I think if the Fathier track were slowed down and we are still watching it, it would end up looking montagey, because when I feel like when music is slower than the action happening on screen, it makes you feel like time is moving faster, or like
Right.
you're skipping.
Duel of the Fates is so exciting because it's keeping up with the frantic lightsaber battle.
Yes, that's a good point. It is, But at the same time, I feel like Duel of the Fates has a lot more sustained sections as well, like with the singing, with holding out, like with the, the parts where they're like holding out long notes in the chorus. And that makes it feel like grand and time warped again. So I think within Duel of the Fates, there's playing with time. Honestly, sort of like just the scene in Phantom Menace, where it feels like every time they get stuck in those, like, in those energy traps, whatever they are. I can't remember what they're called.
So the music slows down with what's going on screen.
Or I feel like a similar thing happens on screen as it does in the music, where like there are fast parts, like, but then when it's like, it has that like kind of pause, freeze frame moment.
Yeah, that might be one of John Williams' strengths, is being able to match the musical tempo to the screen tempo.
Yeah, he is very good at that. He's very good at a lot of things. I think what's the Fathiers thing, I think if I were a musician recording this on the score, and I didn't know what was going on in the movie, and it's time to record this cue and I don't know the title of it or anything, I think I would have assumed there's a horse race. Like, I think it would have been that obvious to me. And I'll tell you, I'm going to name like 10 examples of pieces people can check out that it reminds me of. Because it's not just horse races, but in the Fathiers track...
races?
No.
Oh.
Because I think the galloping rhythm is such a specific, like, mechanical is not the right word, but it's like maybe like something is happening. Like there's... I don't know how to describe it better, but like there is something tangible happening that is making them, that is propelling them. It's not just like a process that you can't see or hear. It's like there's movement. Like there's like a rudder, or there's like something, you're aware of what is making the movement happen. So if you think of William Tell Overture, that's one thing that I'm instantly reminded of. It's by Rossini, and let's see. It's like let me see if I can hum it. And it has that like the like throughout.
Yeah, I think that's in a lot of Looney Tunes or old cartoons where there's a horse.
Yes, it is. It is often used in there. Actually, I think William Tell Overture is used in Looney Tunes, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when I went to the YouTube video to like pull links to put in the show notes, like I think some of the comments are like, Looney Tunes sent me here. I'm here because of Looney Tunes. There's also a piece called Light Cavalry Overture by Von Suppé, which cavalry, that seems like a horse thing. And it has
It is.
Yeah, it is. It has a gallopy thing. And Ride of the Valkyries by Wagner.
I think of helicopters.
Oh, wait, what movie is that?
Apocalypse Now.
Oh, that's a good point. But see, helicopters, I feel, are in the same vein, or in a similar vein as horse riding, because of the thingy that spins. What's it called?
The rotor blades.
Because of the rotor blades, like that's what I mean by like you can see the thing spinning, or galloping or whatever. Also, in addition to the rhythm, another thing that ties those pieces together, for me at least, it's not necessarily like, again, not an intentional association, but just one that I've picked up on over the years, and this happens to be things that they have in common, is, let's see, the brass thing, the punchy brass leaps. They all have that, like, boop, 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 boop. That was a bad rendition. Another thing that I noticed, and this has a lot to do with composers like Khachaturian, Mussorgsky, and Rimsky-Korsakov even. For some reason, all the examples that immediately sprang to my mind were Russian Romantic composers, and xylophone was a thing, too. In the Fathiers track, you might notice that after the main brass line, there's too many octaves. The strings here, violins specifically, and the xylophone go.
That's very horse racy.
Is it?
Yes.
Explain.
It's the same. I heard galloping. Da 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 da.
In the rhythm?
Yes.
That's a good point.
Or I heard someone sneaking down the stairs.
That's okay. This will make better sense on the violin. What I'm getting at is like the chromatic, the fast chromatic line. When I say that, does that make any sense, Burkey?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Okay.
Fast chromatic.
I mean, it goes. Does that ring a bell at all? Do. Okay. Flight of the Bumblebee.
Yes.
Okay.
I've heard of it.
Okay. So it's like no. It's really hard to sing that one. Turns out singing the song that is supposed to be extremely fast and chromatic is very difficult. So, okay, chromatic is like, do you notice how close together these notes are?
Yes, because I can see your hand playing the piano.
Okay, that's a start. So, okay. I mentioned chromatic on the last episode, but I realized afterward that I'm not happy with how I explained it. I explained it in a way that skipped like so many steps and gave a very hyper specific to my playing practice definition. I said like it means that there's just half steps between the notes, which doesn't do the term chromatic justice. So I was thinking of this example. I was thinking of this analogy. So I'm going to try it on you, Burkey. Tell me if this analogy makes sense. Imagine first of all, you know that you know what all the notes are in music, in Western music, all the recognized notes, pretty much like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then it repeats. Okay. So actually, if we were to look at all the unique notes, like the piano is the most easily visual instrument that I can use as an example, but it doesn't matter what instrument it is. You would also include things like A sharp and C sharp. And so technically in Western, like classical music, let's just say in Romantic music, there are 12 notes. Okay, it's not just 7. It's not just A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But if you include all the notes between those main pillars, it would be A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp. So that is just the names that have been assigned. But suffice to say that there are 12 pitches, okay? So it doesn't matter how you get there, but just know that it's all the same recycled 12 notes in all of this music, okay? So imagine that you are a sports team. You're a team manager. I'm bad at sports, so this is going to be really awkward. You're a sports team person. You have 12 players to pick from, and it's these 12 unique notes. A sharp, B, whatever. The same 12 notes. And you can pick 7. You can pick only 7 because each scale, in the context we're talking about, each scale only has 7 notes. So like A, B, C, D, E, F, G is 7. And okay, I lost you a little bit, right?
Sports team.
Okay, sports team.
There's 12
players on the bench.
Players, and I need 7.
You need 7. And your sports team is named C major, okay?
I remember that from piano class.
Okay. I'm just picking a random key. Okay.
Okay.
C major is the name of your team. And so you pick 7 notes to be part of your team C major. The thing is, you specifically are not really going to get to pick. The teams are actually, they're presets. So if you are the C major team, you ceremoniously are going to pick C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Those are going to be the people on your team of C major. And it doesn't mean things like C sharp and G sharp don't exist, but they're on the bench. Does that make sense?
Instead of sports team, I think sports play. So we need to do the C major play on the field. So U7 will lead this play. Like in American football. Oh, we'll do the C major offensive pass. So U7.
Sure. Because of the presets?
Because because plays are preset in the book, in a team's book of moves or plays.
Okay, fair enough. That's fine. But the point is, if you were going to do the D play, the 7 players that you would pick would be, and you don't have to know this, but just know that each of them have their own preset. And so if you are doing D, you are going to pick D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp. Those are going to be your 7. And again, it doesn't mean that B flat doesn't exist and the other ones not picked don't exist, because there are 12 total. They're just not part of this. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so that is...
There's always 12 notes, but each play or key uses 7 of the 12.
Yeah, as their main ones. So in the name for what happens when you use the 7 that you have in your play, in your preset, is diatonic, which doesn't really matter, but like it comes from like the Greek words, and it means like through the tones. Okay, that's fine. So when I say chromatic, what that means is that even though you have your preset 7, it means one of the extra ones off the bench is actually going to come in and add a little extra shade of color. So even though your D team has D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D, it means like maybe you're going to also pull in E flat. That is not already part of your team. Or whatever, play. Does that kind of make sense? It means using one of the players that's not in your preset. It still exists as a note.
Right.
And it's used in other keys as a main note, but it's not normally used in your key. So when that happens, when you have an extra note come in that's not in your preset, aka your key, that's what's called chromatic. And think of it in terms of like chromatic, meaning like intensity of color, like the different shades of color. So when you add chromatic notes to what you're playing, you're adding like an extra shade of color. And it doesn't mean that you're like changing the key that you are, but it's like you're adding something that doesn't usually belong in your key to the mixture. And then usually it's like in and out really quick. Because if a chromatic note, or if like chromatic notes like hang out too long, that often means that you're like actually just changing keys. Like you just, yeah. Does that make sense? Basically, like the idea of chromatics meaning like notes that don't fit in to the key.
Right. There's a chromatic scale, but I can ignore it by playing notes that aren't in the scale.
Sort of, yeah. You said chromatic scale. Like there's a scale. So like in this case, Fathiers, it's in D minor. And when the violins add that thing where it's like, it's adding a lot of notes that don't belong in D minor. So that's why it kind of sounds a little bit spicy there. So when you re-listen to this, or listeners, if you know what I'm talking about, think of other references that I'll give you are Flight of the Bumblebee, which has a lot of like which is chromatic all over the place. It's like characterized by its chromatic passages. So it sounds very like crowded and hard to pinpoint like what note you're on, because it's like basically just being like, screw it, we're going to put all the players in and we're just going to have them all like doing musical chairs really fast. And that's like Flight of the Bumblebee. Another one is Night on Bald Mountain by Modest Mussorgsky. And the famous orchestration that's in Fantasia, the film, orchestrated by Rimsky-Korsakov, who wrote Flight of the Bumblebee. So it's like this cadre of Russian composers are really into this, and with xylophones. And the Fathiers track, I swear I hear xylophone there too. So it just reminds me of this tradition of chromatic, xylophone, mostly high-pitched, Russian. They're all frantic pieces too. They're all frantic and steady tempo. Another one that I'll bring up is Saber Dance, Khachaturian. Do you know that one?
That's also in Looney Tunes.
Oh, that's so great. I love that piece. So yeah, that's what the Fathiers reminds me of. It feels very nicely in line with the horse racing, with the horse type of cavalry overtures, and also the frantic, chromatic passages of the Romantic Russian composers. I'll put all of these links in the show notes, but there, that was my spiel.
Mention your favorite Russian composer in the comments.
Yeah. I love Russian composers. So actually, okay, I'm going to tell a funny Russian composer story. So back in the day in Russia, there was a group of 5 composers, and they were known at the time as the 5. And these 5 composers were sort of trying to write in a more nationalistic style that honored like Russian folk traditions instead of, what European classical traditions were doing, like the Italians and the French and whatever. The Russian composers, these specific 5, were trying to bring in their own style. And first of all, as you know, maybe Tchaikovsky is Russian or was Russian. He did not like the 5. Tchaikovsky was more mainstream. He was more like, he was accepted as a mainstream, like formally trained conservatory musician. But Rimsky-Korsakov and Modest Mussorgsky, who I just mentioned with like the chromatics and everything, they were in the Russian 5, also called the Mighty 5. So I don't know, maybe it was part of like that sort of revival of Russian music. I don't know. But all 5 of these composers were buried in the same grave.
Is that the funny part?
Good. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a funny person. So.
That was great. That punchline came out of nowhere.
Thank you.
I did not see the story ending there.
I'm glad, I think. So, moving on. All right. The last assignment was highlight a couple non-musical sounds that caught your attention and describe them. I'm curious what you picked up on as your favorite non-musical sounds.
Yeah. The first one we hear in the 5 minutes is I found the noise of BB-8 shooting the coins, chucking the coins out, very satisfying. That thud, 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 thud.
Me too. I wrote that down. It sounded very punchy.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could feel like there's feedback on it.
It felt like there was some weight to the coins.
Yes. Oh, and
which is important since they were in pain and getting hit by the coins.
Yes, it felt like there was force behind the
not the force.
Not the force, but I felt that physically there was force. Like if I were shooting the coins, I feel like I would also feel a little bit of like a hit. I would like kind of recoil a little bit shooting them because it was maybe like such a big punch, like a gun or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the main theme plays over that slowly.
Yeah. My note about that. Oh, was that okay? My note about that was that music is very familiar and feels very classic Star Wars
It is,
because it's the main theme.
because it is literally the main theme. But to your point, it sounds different because it's slowed down and it's the rhythm is stretched out. It does sound very different. Actually, it reminds me of how the rhythm in the main theme is also stretched out in the Rise of Skywalker trailer, which made the internet
John Williams
go
can
wild.
save a lot of time by just taking the first 6 movies tracks and speeding them up, slowing them down, and then we go, oh, it's a motif or a callback.
Last Jedi is full of those. What else did you know?
The police in their very silly outfits with the capes and the funny bucket heads. The pistol makes a nice charging noise.
Charging
makes
noise.
Me think, yeah, and makes me think they're set to stun. They're not just regular blasters, inaccurate, imprecise.
Oh,
But there's a subtle charging noise to the pistols the police force use.
that's a good observation. I'll have to listen to see. Yeah, I don't really think I thought too hard about that because I don't know. Cool. Okay.
I was looking into the noises the Fathiers make because I'm always interested how do you make a impersonation animal sound, and I know Ben Burt did a lot by just mixing real sounds, and so the Fathiers were a mix of bears and goats.
Which I wouldn't have guessed, I think.
How often have you listened to bears and goats?
Well, goats, I feel like I have listened to a lot of goats, but a very specific like Disney type of goat. Like, and I mean Disney like in the sense of there's a ride at Disneyland where there's like a goat that makes a sound. So when I think of goat, I think of the one type of goat that I have heard a lot.
Oh, not a real goat.
No.
Oh.
No.
I think they used real goats, although they could have saved money by using the Disney goat.
That would have been very strange. That goat is, yeah.
The first roar I heard from the Fathier, after finding out they were bears and goats, felt kind of bear-like. I've heard goats out, not in the wild, but on farms I've passed by, and luckily I've never been close enough to a bear to hear it.
Yeah. Again, I don't have personal experience with bears either. So I think that's probably just why I wouldn't have guessed that. The sound people like Ren Kleiss, Matthew Wood, they definitely did a lot of the real animal thing as well, like following in the tradition of Ben Burt. And something like one of the Fathier sounds that I loved was, I don't know what it's called when animals do this, but they're like sighing. And
is it called sighing?
I don't know. It feels like wet as well.
Alexa, do animals sigh?
Do you know what I mean?
It's wet because they're panting because they don't have sweat glands like you and I.
Is that what it is? It also feels like they're blowing.
It
sounds like they're blowing their nose a little bit too.
I think that's part of panting because the Fathiers, they're running pretty hard and they're covered in fur, so they're not sweating.
I mean also when they're in the
cooling themselves down.
I mean also when they're in the stable. So like when they first see the Fathiers, they kind of moan and they do like a like horses do it too, where it's like.
Oh, is that called a whinny?
Is it? No, I think whinnies are like when they. Oh, that's a neigh. Maybe that is a whinny.
I think that's a whinny.
Okay, when it's like sort of like they're sneezing a little bit, but they're like it sounds like there's phlegm in there a little bit.
Yeah, well they have a long face.
Yeah. Okay. This is making more sense. But I like that sound. Also, like my cat does it too, and it's an animal thing that feels very intimate, I guess. And the Fathier noises, I just appreciate them. Also, we get that same sort of noise when Rose is about to like set the one free.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's always a good choice to use combine real animal sounds. 'Cause how would you make up imitate alien animal sounds or alien sounds
Yeah,
and make them convincing?
totally. I that Fathier sound is convincing to me. They're huge animals and they make a big thud as well, like a satisfying thud.
Yeah, I didn't. I believe they have hooves and not toes
Oh,
since they're galloping.
is that
Although other animals gallop with toes.
okay? Wait, okay. Educate me here. Would they make a different type of sound if they have like what difference do toes versus hooves make?
A hoof is just an overgrown toenail, so it's all keratin,
So it'd be harder.
and I think so. It also depends on the surface they're running on too. I think that would be a bigger factor of what noise to expect versus toes versus hoof,
That is
because the
interesting.
the Fathiers are making a different noise when they're running through the city and the casino than when they break into the wild.
Explain. Like, what is the difference?
When you're running on grass, it's just a softer, more dampened noise.
Yeah. And was that accurate to what is in the movie?
I, I don't hear a lot of the hoof running when they leave the city because there's so much going on with the music and
Mm-hmm.
the spaceships chasing them. And so most of the galloping noises we hear, I feel like when we're in a more intimate setting of inside the casino or the tight city streets.
Yep. Yep. Those, I did notice that the alleys, like the city streets, make like have a, they're like echo chambers a little bit because when the guy shouts as he's like jumping over the car to get out of the way, he's like, ah, there's like a big echo. And for some reason, that part felt relatable. And I hope that's not a premonition. But when I think about the sound design of Fathiers or like anything, I try to think about like what physical aspects would have had to inform the sound that they make. And I admit that I was mostly just thinking of like the onboard physical aspects of the Fathiers, like the size and like the how far their legs travel and how much they weigh and you know the pace at which they would go. But I hadn't even considered the surfaces, the way the surfaces interact with them as mattering too. But yeah, now I'm going to think about that more. The last,
The what?
go on.
Oh, yeah, no, I have a lot of sound
Oh, please.
things I noticed. So uh, there's that Jurassic Park moment if you're watching the film and the zoom in of the glass of tea or glass of water vibrating. Ryan Johnson's a pretty big film nerd, and so there's so many visual references. And then uh, I didn't hear it when we watched the movie, but with the headphones in, there's a nice deep rumbling noise going along with the water vibration to let you know that something is coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to add that when we see the water shaking and we hear the loud rumble, at this point, the Fathiers track is still, it's not, we don't hear it prominently, which makes it obvious that the Fathiers track is obviously tied to the Fathiers action and not part of what we're looking at. So I do appreciate that separation. Like, you know, instead of keeping the Fathiers track blaring while we just visually look at the water shaking, the music or like the emission of the music and the filtering of the music kind of zips us into another headspace for a brief moment of time. The music that is playing there, instead of the Fathiers music, again, I think this is such a delightful transition. It's not really a smooth transition. It's a very drastic transition, but that's the point. Is we get another bit of diegetic music. So much diegetic music on Canto Bight. This is The Long Goodbye that John Williams himself is playing on the piano. The Long Goodbye it was a film, I think from the 74, from the 70s. And John Williams wrote the film score for that. The Long Goodbye is the title track, obviously, of the movie entitled The Long Goodbye. And lyrics are by Johnny Mercer. And what's interesting about that movie and this song is that if you go to the soundtrack of The Long Goodbye, it's like all of the tracks are The Long Goodbye, just performed in different arrangements. So it was like the director Robert Altman's idea to have the song performed in various styles and everything because it worked with the music. So I think it's interesting that here we get yet one other iteration of The Long Goodbye. Ryan Johnson himself requested this from John Williams.
Film nerd.
Super film nerd. Cattail. When the Fathiers bust in and we hear this timpani crash, that is John Williams' brother playing the timpani. So that is a Williams brother duet. Continue with your...
There's only a few more.
Okay.
That's fine. No, it's fine because I wouldn't. Anakin's on the prowl.
Yep, Anakin is rubbing up against. All
right. When they get to almost their spaceship, it's just a nice, satisfying laser and explosion noise, very Star Warsy.
Mm-hmm.
And then researching for this minute, according to Nerdist, the spaceships that are chasing them is the same noise from the Clone Wars cartoon series.
Oh.
The spaceship that, or just from the Clone Wars. I think it's the same as the Republican commando ship, the ones that hover in and drop off clone troopers.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look that up.
Verify that.
Yeah, I'll have to verify.
A nice sound design Easter egg.
It is cool that like as things are created, and I just imagine they have like a sound bank of all the different ships that they've created and whatnot, that they can bring in old ones like that. Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, I feel like that's an exciting part of working on a movie. These movies is, and here's the file folder of every Star Wars sound effect.
I agree. It sounds like a little bit like the dream, like working with such a franchise with such a cool library to pick from. The parking violation section, that's another film reference. Did you pick up on that?
Where their ship gets blown up?
No, when they're oh wait, is this in these minutes? Where I might actually, this might be next week or last week, or when the cops are dragging them off. It's a Brazil reference. No, I think it's a different set of minutes. Okay, never mind. But when we
edit this part
but when we get to the end of the 5-minute sequence and we're on the cliff, or I guess the whole end feels very like Spielberg to me, with the like flashing the flashlights.
Very Close Encounters.
Maybe Jurassic Park. Maybe E.T.
It ends. These 5 minutes end with a cliffhanger of them stuck, and then DJ shows up in the fancy ship with BB-8.
Yes, but also I feel like when they're looking, when they're looking over the cliff.
Yes.
That's like a Hitchcock thing.
Is it just a point of view shot, or?
I mean, it feels like it, like the Vertigo thing.
Right.
But I'm chalking it all up.
Chalking it up to what?
Well, to like, I wouldn't necessarily assume that this were intentional in another film, just mainly because it's Ryan Johnson.
I don't blame him. If I was going to direct a movie, I would have to force myself not to make a lot of allusions to other films I love.
Really?
Or enjoy.
Huh. Like, what would you do?
I would want to reference like Kurosawa or Wes Anderson, or just build off like the films I enjoy.
I wonder if I would do that compositionally. Probably. Probably.
Build off some John Williams piece or Holst.
The thing is, I actually don't, like, just on a personal note, I don't like trying.
You don't like John Williams. This whole podcast is a sham.
Twist. I do not like to emulate John Williams. I don't. Compositionally, when I have...
Because it's like trying to emulate the master?
Not just that, but that's one aspect of it. Like when I'm composing on media projects or asked if I'm interested in them, I literally ask, like, are you hoping for something John Williamsy or my own style? Because I don't like to do the John Williams style. And part of it is just like, I don't think I could, like I don't like, that's not naturally the style that I write in. And it feels a little bit like I'm trying on like dad's clothes or something. And another thing is John Williams, what makes him really special as a film composer for me, and is that he is inspired by so many, like such a wide range of composers. John Williams is not just emulating Holst. He is inspired by like 20 composers, like a long tradition. Like he knows his stuff. He's not just trying to copy his favorites. And so the John Williams style is like, I think, hope this doesn't like, not offend, but like, I'm not trying to like speak badly of other composers, but I think John Williams was so special and groundbreaking when he was like really starting to sink into his style that we know him for, like around Jaws and Star Wars time, is that now that a lot of film composers try to copy John Williams, and it's like trying to copy a copy of so everything is like a copy of a copy of a copy at a certain point. Does that make sense? Because John Williams is like a mixture of like tons of influences that he really richly understands and can draw from pretty naturally. So people emulate so if someone were emulating the Fathiers track, that is different from in the Fathiers track. Perhaps he is inspired by William Tell and Khachaturian and Rimsky-Korsakov and Mussorgsky and like all these other things. Does that make sense? That's just how I see it.
Right. It makes sense because George Lucas was imitating the
same
serials
thing.
And things he saw, and then in the 90s and 2000s, people are emulating the Star Wars they grew up with. And it's just, you can kind of trace back, like make a cinematic family tree of back to Flash Gordon. And you can do that musically with the people imitating John Williams. And then the difference here is that John Williams has like 20 lines going from him.
That's
backwards.
That's an excellent point, actually. And Star Wars Minute podcast, I feel like there was a week where they mentioned that as well. And I was thinking the same thing happened with John Williams. Yeah. So like the source material, being inspired by the source, like going to the source, I feel is something that John Williams does really well. So yeah, I don't know how we got on that subject, but I think that's my answer too. Like why I wouldn't emulate John Williams. John Williams is just very special in my heart. Yeah. So that's that. Moving on to something else, because I love diegetic music in Star Wars, and Canto Bight is full of little tiny bits of diegesis in musically and sound-wise. First of all, when the Fathiers are ripping through the casino, we hear the three things. One is the lounge music that I already mentioned. Another is there's like a piano plunk. It's like, nope.
When the piano gets stomped on.
Yeah.
That made me have a guttural ha.
Yeah.
It was a very funny, almost cartoony.
Yeah.
Stomp the piano. It makes a funny noise.
Very true. And then right after that, there's the opera singer. Goes,
Yeah, that the very obvious the alien opera singer and
Yeah. And something that like I checked back on the soundtrack. So when I listened to the soundtrack to the Fathier track, the opera singer moment is in there, but the opera singer's not in there, if that makes sense. It's like the karaoke version of that moment. Oh, like the track leaves space for that moment, but you don't hear the actual opera singer. You hear like another
you have to
instrument playing that.
you have to do the opera singing yourself.
The listener,
'Cause
yes.
yes.
Yes. So yeah, it's just another instrument that kind of sets up a pedestal for the opera singer filling that in the movie. And moments like that where the diegetic elements are supported by the score, I like those moments. There was also a moment with when Kylo Ren is talking to Snoke, sort of more toward the beginning of the movie, and the Praetorian guards like they brandish their weapons. You hear like a something in the score, and you also hear sound design on top of that, and and the line is blurred between like, was that a sound effect or was that like some weird high pitched thing that was being played? And the answer is like, in the film, it's actually both of them mixed together, and this is one of those moments as well, and I like those moments. In the Disney Plus, or like in the score only version of the soundtrack, or sorry, the score only version of the film, where there's no dialogue but you just hear the score, they actually kept the opera singer in, so they include the diegetic musical parts as well. So, little fun facts. I think that those are all the main rants that I want. The main rants that I wanted to go on today. The soundtrack includes, like, there are two pieces that are included in these 5 minutes from the soundtrack. At the beginning, it's the track "Who Are You," which is it's probably one of the tracks that I know and can recall the least. And then there's the Fathiers. So even though we hear Rose's theme, it is all included. It's all embedded in the Fathiers track, and it's a very short track. And I'm going to put links to all those in the show notes, because I think comparing them to the Russian examples and the like cavalry overture examples might be interesting. Yes.
Would you be drawn out of the movie if they just used the William Tell overture
Yes.
instead
Oh
of
my
the Father?
gosh.
Okay, geez.
Whoa.
I just thought, oh, that would work. And then we don't have to spend time writing a horse track. It fits.
Well, it's because that's not a Star Wars thing to do. Like, they don't use
Right. They don't.
other
No,
stuff.
they don't do that.
Yeah. So just for a number, if it were just some random film that I didn't have preconceived like ideas of what that would be, then I think it would be totally fine. Yeah.
But it doesn't fit in the Star Wars verse.
Correct. Only because I already, like, if for some reason I were unfamiliar with the William Tell overture and I just didn't know what it was, and I thought it was John Williams, then that would be different. It's just the fact that I already have a relationship with the William Tell overture separately. It would be weird for me, at least, to hear it in Star Wars. Plus, I think it's a little bit too happy for that scene. But
It is happy. They're freeing the Fathiers
true.
back into the wild. Although I don't know if the Fathiers are native, so if that it might be wrecking the ecosystem.
I think they're native.
Oh, all right, everything's fine then.
Would it bother you if like, because you know William Tell.
I don't know. I think I might go, oh, Looney Tunes did this first, or that sounds familiar. Or would I be so focused on the film and not, would it, I don't know if it would stand out to me.
Oh, okay. So when you're watching films for the first time, to what extent, like, what do you notice the soundtrack? Like, what's your process of taking that in?
I notice the sounds and the digenetic music more.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm more focused on the visuals and cinematography. And then the soundtrack is is more. Don't want to hurt anyone's feelings by calling it background noise,
I don't
but
think
I
you
feel
are.
like the
It is. It
soundtrack
is
is just
background noise.
supporting. See, yeah, the soundtrack is just supporting the film, and so I'm never directly thinking about it.
I'm with you, actually. Film scores are mainly incidental music. They're meant to be. I
Mhm.
like to think of them as part of as another like narrative device. They're another like narrative formal tool, like cinematography.
Right.
So
So see,
some people really notice like cinematography and like shot composition and everything like that. And I only do if it like really stands out. But because I have less vocabulary and like terminology built up around that field of study and art, I don't remember it to the same degree. So like with music, I actually don't focus on the music when I'm watching movies either. But just because I have a lot of presets in my mind where I can be like, oh, that's in C. Like I don't have to pay attention as much because already I see the pattern. Like the patterns, pop up in my head really instantly because I'm a musician. I just notice more things, but yeah, I'm not like I don't try to focus on it.
an example I thought of was listening to Star Wars Minute, the Rogue One minutes, and when you were on and you mentioned, "Oh, it's not John Williams composing," was the first time I realized it wasn't John Williams.
Oh,
So I mean, that's how little, or I couldn't, hearing it, I thought, "Oh yeah, okay, it's Star Wars music. It's probably John Williams." And then that was finding out it wasn't him, and you were talking about the differences in the music, or here's where he's referencing this
oh, Chiquino.
Michael Giacchino, and I think he did a good job. It was very Star Warsy, but I did. I mean, if you would just listen to the soundtracks, like, would you be able to tell if that was Giacchino or Williams?
Um, yes, from the main title. It's not if like I think you could fool me if it were completely novel pieces, but
Mm-hmm.
what what Berkey's referring to is like when I was on Star Wars Minute podcast for the Rogue One season, I mentioned that when I saw Rogue One in theaters, like I couldn't turn my brain off. Like I couldn't stop noticing the fact that it wasn't John Williams throughout the movie, and what that's really a shorthand way of referring to what I was actually feeling, which was like not like indignantly, oh, this isn't John Williams, but it was more so that like I would hear themes that sounded Star Wars esque, but they weren't finishing. Like they would go off in a different direction because it has to be a different theme. Like he can't just literally rip off the same theme. Like he had to write new themes, but because they were still in the Star Wars style, it almost sounded like it would be like the main theme, or it almost sounded like it was going to be another theme that I already knew, and then it was just not. And it reminded me of, and this has nothing to do with like Giacchino's talent. I think he did a wonderful job, but because I was expecting one thing and it was the other, it's like when there's like a whole industry of people who make cover songs of things and they change enough notes to like get around copyright. Like it felt like in I that's the feeling I had is like
I never
rip
had
off
that
themes.
feeling once watching Rogue One.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, they did their job.
Wow.
Michael Giacchino, please come on the show.
I mean, that would be wonderful. He's awesome. But it was like the main theme is the main thing because you're used
Mm-hmm.
to seeing the main title like the I don't know the Star Wars theme like the main theme and it was something different which I grew to love but it was not the John Williams theme. Um, that is really funny. But you do notice when things don't like when you don't like things. You said
Yeah, right, like the like some of the Canto Bight stuff.
musically though or
Musically, it's unoffending.
got it. All right. It's
I just the the chase scene was fun. I remember when I saw this in the theaters, I think I said out loud, I'd rather watch pod racing.
what like when you say you're paying attention to the film as a whole, what
Hmm.
because what aspects are you primed to pay more attention to? Like if I'm primed, I want to just say I'm watching the movie as a whole, but I'm primed to notice music things. What are you primed to notice?
I feel like when I'm watching films, the thing I think to myself is, well, that's a cool shot.
Okay, so you're a shot person.
And yeah, not yeah, and not I don't hear like, oh, that's a cool motif or Lydian mode.
Yeah, that's fine. But like when you get home,
Yeah,
do
but
you
I
remember like some of the cool shots?
sometimes they stick in my head, and or if I watch it on the television, I'll be like, oh, that looks amazing.
And since you have like such a big knowledge of films, like way more than me, do you also notice, do you tend to notice like when there are references to things that remind you of other movies? Because I know like you're one of the first people that immediately pointed out the wings crane shot to me in Canto Bight.
I'm not. I mean, I'm not a savant at it. When I saw it, I went, that seems very familiar. And then I looked it up, and luckily there's a million websites about movies and Easter eggs and references now.
Yeah, but that was you following your
And
spidey sense on that.
yeah, yeah, I went. Yeah, I just finished watching every Best Oscar winner, and I think I had Wings on DVD. I might still, or a friend owes it to me. But yeah, I remember that shot. And then when I was reading about Wings, that was like a really cool technical shot they did back in the day. That it was like really, they had to build technology to do that moving crane shot. And then when I saw it here, and I feel like it was kind of obvious and glaring when they did it here, like they were really calling attention to it. Or that might just be Canto Bight because it's all so gold and glitzy.
I mean, I didn't catch, like, I wouldn't have known the reference unless I
Have you
had heard about
have
it.
you seen Wings from the 1920s?
No. So it just went completely over my head. Yeah. But I mean, it's the same thing. You've seen Wings, but like I know Rimsky-Korsakov. And so that's just what I'm going to be more
Right.
able to talk about and notice. Oh my
And
gosh.
then, yeah, I notice music when it hasn't aged well. Like when you watch 70s movies that use disco.
Oh, okay. Like when it mismatches,
When it mismatches or just like the music was like vogue at the time.
when it's anachronistic,
Yeah.
like when it's yeah, that makes sense. Like if this were done in the 70s and 80s style of pop music.
Right. Like I remember some behind the scenes features where supposedly Lucas had to argue for like classical music with the studio because he thought it would make it more timeless. Like if you watched Star Wars 1977 and you heard synthesizers and disco.
That's a great point. That's like one of the reasons I have trouble watching 70. Like I have trouble watching some movies from past decades if the music feels like it's really from that time. Although sometimes that's a plus. I'm getting better. That's about all I had for these minutes. Did you have anything else that you wanted to mention about the music or sound? Any
No,
questions?
I
Any things
liked
you didn't like?
No, I thought the music here was very fitting. It worked. Good job, everyone.
Do you have a favorite track on this soundtrack?
No,
Do you have at least?
the the music played at the Yoda reveal.
Oh,
Spoilers.
okay. Oh, okay. I'll get there.
I don't. The only soundtrack, Star Wars soundtrack I owned was Episode One on compact disc.
Me too, actually.
Yeah, and that I don't like hearing these things when you reference like, oh, Leia's theme. I have to go YouTube that, and then I don't think of the soundtracks as distinct. I don't I I don't think the soundtrack as a traditional album with tracks.
Me neither,
The sound
actually. Me neither.
the soundtrack is one 90-minute or this was the longest Star Wars. It's 2-hour song.
I actually agree with you on that. I don't
Yeah, it reminds me
really
more
have
of,
knowledge. I never owned all of the soundtracks anyway.
yeah. It reminds me more of an opera. I don't think of an opera as different tracks.
Mm-hmm.
It's all one. It's all one long track.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way. I mean, that's
It should
literally
be
what
done.
it is. That's what it's intended to be. The
Mm-hmm.
album is the commercial release, the distillation of the wonderful art form that we see that is film, that is all these arts mixed together. When someone plays the Leia theme, after, even if you don't know by name, do you recognize it, like when someone plays it?
I recognize it as Star Warsy.
Okay. When, like, in preparing for this episode, when taking when basically being forced to watch the minutes over and over again, was that like a challenging experience, or did it make you notice things that you would have missed? Or
I spent more time focusing on like the sound effects and sound design.
mm-hmm.
Like I didn't at first pick up the deep rumbling noises under the vibrating water until watching it so intently with earbuds. But
So
yeah,
the layers opened up with more viewings.
yeah, when I kept rewatching the clip before recording, I kept I had to force myself to pay attention to the music, and then I had to rewatch the last half, the 5 minutes, over and over because I kept getting sucked into the film and just focusing on the chase scene and what's going on. And like, oh yeah, I need to pay more attention to the music.
Or not. I mean, it is an observation in itself that when it just lines up for you. I mean, yeah, that's I'm just like I'm so interested in how, like, if I could go back to some sort of like mental purity of not noticing it as much, I just can't even imagine. So I'm trying to imagine what it's like to watch a movie as Matt Burkey. But listeners, do let me know where you fall in the scale of Xanthe to Burkey.
Are you in the middle?
Are you?
Are you a third different, even weirder triangle?
I mean, really though, like I make a lot of assumptions here talking on the show, and everyone has such a different experience watching films. I'm curious, like, to what extent would you know off the top of your head certain themes? Or like, are you more of a soundtrack person? Are you more of like the music as it appears in the film person? Can you point out the specific tracks on the vinyl that you owned of Empire Strikes, like whatever? And what are your favorite themes? Now I'm just really interested. Please let me know. Please let me know. Because I would love to talk to more people that have a different point of view than me. It's elucidating as always. And thanks for getting me to explain the chromatic thing better, Burkey. It's helpful.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Where can people find you?
I'm in Iowa.
Until people no. Where else can people find you?
I see. I'm on Twitter at mr_Burkey.
I'm not trying to dox you here. Like, say no more. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No. I mean, say no more about your physical location. No. I don't know how this like simple question just went off the rails. Let's start over. Where are you online?
Oh, okay. That's much more clear. I'm on Twitter at mr_Burkey. You can
Gotcha.
find me there,
All right.
retweeting other podcasts or having strange, boring thoughts. Sometimes I post my baking.
And Burkey has also been on another show that talks about soundtrack music. What's it called?
Yeah, I've been on another podcast called Movies That Rock.
Yes.
We go over rock and roll type movies. You can hear me talk about the Blues Brothers or Spinal Tap.
Yes, Burkey has a lot of knowledge on those things. I listened to both of those episodes. Cool. Well, I hope this episode was interesting. Again, let me know how you perceive Star Wars music, the types of things that you notice, types of things you don't notice, what matters to you and what doesn't. You can leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. You can email me. I'm on Twitter at ChrisAntheTan and Star Wars Museman. And there's a link in the show notes if you prefer to submit an anonymous question. I think that's about it. Thank you for listening and sharing the show. And I'll see you next week on Star Wars Music Minute.